Hi students. Today I'm going to be talking about the 5 rules of sentence structure. This is for ELA grades 7 and 8, and this really targets learning to use a semicolon and also joining clauses to convey specific meanings. This is the best way I found to simplify using dependent and independent clauses. It doesn't fix all of your grammatical problems, but this addresses the main issues that students have in constructing sentences. I've pre-written most of these out, but I am going to add some abbreviations for them. So if you're more of like a mathematical minded person, this actually will help you if you struggle in grammar, because it's like a formula. All right, to begin with, rule 1. Every sentence must have at least one independent clause. If you know your independent clauses and your dependent clauses, which if you don't, pause the video, kind of refresh yourself with that. But if you know your independent and dependent clauses, you know that a sentence, a complete sentence, must have a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. So a subject, a verb, and it must make sense, right? So obviously, every sentence must have at least one independent clause. Now, independent clause, I am abbreviating with the letters IC. Now, rule 2. What about when you add in a dependent clause into your sentence? If you begin your sentence with a dependent clause, then you must separate with a comma, okay? So this would be, if you're starting with a dependent clause, you're going to add a comma before your independent clause. You see what I did there? Dependent clause, comma, independent clause. And by the way, I know these rules are taking up kind of a whole page here. If you look though, the rules themselves, I've written them out so that they also function as examples. So look right here at rule 2. When beginning with a dependent clause. You say that aloud to yourself, when beginning with a dependent clause. That is not a complete sentence. This is itself a dependent clause. But separate with a comma is an independent clause. So this example itself is actually following its own rule. See the comma? All right, rule 3. One way that you can join two independent clauses is with a semicolon. Okay, semicolons are used only between independent clauses. They are not the same as a comma. Semicolons are only used between independent clauses. So, again, this is an example. Two independent clauses can be joined. That is an independent clause. Add a semicolon. That is an independent clause. And I have joined it with a semicolon. So come out here to the side, and my abbreviation for rule 3 is IC, semicolon, IC. Okay? Now, rules 4 and 5 are a little more difficult. Just kind of hang in there. Remember, you can always pause the video and review. Rule 4 says join two independent clauses by adding a comma and add a coordinating conjunction. Okay? Coordinating conjunction. You probably know an easier way to refer to those things. Join two independent clauses by adding a comma. This phrase itself is an independent clause. Got a comma. And then I have the word and. Now, many of you probably know the word and, but, or, all those are conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions sound very difficult. They are not. These are fanboys. Fanboys is the acronym for coordinating conjunctions. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Those are your fanboys. This one here we've used and. So I'm going to say IC, comma, and I'm going to say COCON, that's my little abbreviation for coordinating conjunction, and another independent clause, okay? All right, now lastly, rule 5. Okay, now this one has one extra step, so some people mess it up, but this one's very impressive when you use it in your writing. Rule 5 says you can also join two independent clauses by adding a semicolon. However, you must use a conjunctive adverb. There's another difficult term there, but I'll go over that. All right, so again, this first clause here, you can also join two independent clauses by adding a semicolon. That is an independent clause. Notice I've plugged in a semicolon. And then I've got this word here, however, and a comma. The word however is a conjunctive adverb. Conjunctive adverbs, there's a few of them out there. They're made up typically of several smaller words that are joined together. So the word however, therefore, I know the word nevertheless is another, but they're used to join. Okay, so, however, so I'm going to use the abbreviation CONADV, conjunctive adverb. A comma, most people forget that. That is one extra step, and an independent clause. Okay? So those are rules 1 through 5. It's a little overwhelming at first, but you can always come back to this. We're going to practice a little bit real quick. I'm going to do some guided practice with you. So, you can always come back to this slide if you want to, but I'm going to go to the next page. Alright, so I am going to put 2 independent clauses up here, and I'm going to show you how to join them using Rule 2. Now, Rule 2 starts with a dependent clause. So, how am I going to make a dependent clause out of 2 independent clauses? Let me show you. Okay, so here's one clause. The lesson is interesting. Okay? And I'm also going to put down the students are learning. Those are 2 independent clauses. But Rule 2 says DC, comma, IC. So, what I can do here, just because these guys are independent clauses right now, doesn't mean I can't change it a little bit to make one of them dependent. It's all in how you want to join sentences. So, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to add the word because at the beginning. Because the lesson is interesting. Following, that's a dependent clause, and I'm following with my rule, comma, the students are learning. Okay? So I have my dependent clause, I have my comma, and then I have my independent clause. So I followed Rule 2. All right, now what I want you to do, okay, is I'm going to erase some of this real quick. And I want you, instead of following Rule 2, I want you to try to do Rules 3 through 5 with the same 2 independent clauses. So instead of Rule 2, we're going to do Rules 3 through 5, okay? And I'd like you to go ahead and pause the video, write these out, try to join them using all 3 rules. Okay, we're going to go over, hopefully you've gotten the same thing that I'm going to get. Rule 3, we see that you can join 2 independent clauses using a semicolon. Okay? The easiest way, this is probably the easiest one out of all 3, simply all you would have to do would be to write these 2 out and join them with a semicolon. So that was easy enough to do. They're already independent clauses. Okay? Now Rules 4 and 5 is a little different. Rule 4 is where we're joining 2 independent clauses by adding a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So, Rule 4, so I'm going to try to write this out real quick for you. The lesson is interesting. Okay, Rule 4, comma, and I need a fanboy. Not all of them are going to work. So if I say the lesson is interesting but the students are learning, that kind of seems like there's some conflict there. Okay? So I could say the lesson is interesting, comma, and the students are learning. Okay? So hopefully you got that. If you messed up and you maybe chose a fanboy that didn't work, well, technically you did follow the rule, but it may not have made perfect sense in the end. So just make sure to reread your sentence and make sure that it does make sense and everything goes together. All right, now for Rule 5. Okay? I'm going to kind of erase some of this and see if I can just keep rolling with it. All right, for Rule 5, we have that one extra step, so that kind of can be a little difficult to do. All right, for Rule 5, I need to join 2 independent clauses by adding a semicolon. We've already mastered that, but I also have to add in a conjunctive adverb and a comma. The lesson is interesting, semicolon, got that much. But if I say, however the students are learning, does that make sense? I can use another conjunctive adverb. I know another example I gave you was the word therefore. The lesson is interesting, semicolon, therefore, and do not forget to put a comma. If you do not put a comma, that sentence has an error, okay? The lesson is interesting, semicolon, therefore, comma, the students are learning. All right, guys, I hope this has helped you out with sentence structure. Thank you.